This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Welcome. Thank you for coming and joining us for the learning of Teres Hashem, Ezras Hashem Yisbach. As always, we begin with Rishus T'mar Asra, Harav Landau, with continued appreciation to all of you for coming and making the shir possible. We'd like to learn for two very special people, for Alexander Zusha Akayin Ben Esther and Kel Rus Paskaya Rachel, both undergoing treatment this week, new types of treatment. They should have a refuah shalema from Hashem b'sei Shechel Yisrael. We learn with the tefillah that all those looking for a shidduch should find their shidduch quickly and easily. All those awaiting children should be blessed with zarachai v'kayam, a healthy mommy, healthy baby. All those that are looking for parnasa should find it berevach will be covered. All of us should enjoy longer gezunta zisa shalom bayis. All those that have been touched by the dreaded machla, known as yad machla, other related diseases, should have a refuah shalema b'sei Shechel Yisrael. All of us and our loved ones should always be healthy. I want to say before I start the shir that some of my listeners are probably expecting me to say Milei de Espeida on Chacham Harav Hagain Rav Avadia Yosef Zech Tzavka Shavachus Yagim Aleinu, and they are 100% right. However, it will be not this week, probably next week, as I study more the life of this great leader and tzaddik of Klal Yisrael. Three people were standing, three people / angels, they were really malachim, were standing over Avram. The Chidah, in the Torah's Chidah, Ois Yud Beis, writes a very interesting thing. He cites the Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer that Avram Avinu was circumcised on Yom Kippurim. And it's another great schus, and actually the first great schus of Yom Kippur. We say Itzumah Shel Yom Kippurim Mechaper, so that means that the Yom Kippur day has a lot of koyach in it. So the first event, says the Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer, the first historical event to happen on Yom Kippur was that the great courageous act of Avram Avinu, that Avram Avinu circumcised himself at the age of 100 years old, happened on Yom Kippurim. And we should know that it was a very great miracle. It is an interesting medrash brought down that we know that he asked advice from Oner, Eshkol, and Mamre. And the question, of course, is, what kind of advice are you asking? Hashem told you to do it. What's their advice to ask? It's like if Steinman comes over to you and tells you to do something, and you ask your friends for advice. What are you asking advice? The Gadol told you to do it. What are you asking advice for? So it's interesting that it says that Avraham Avinu circumcised the children of his servants, and they died. They died. And here he was to circumcise himself, and the children that he circumcised died. So Mamre told him that the reason why they died is because the command was Himol Yimol. And it means Hamol Yimol, that first you have to circumcise yourself and then circumcise others. And that's why those children died, because you weren't circumcised. So he listened to Mamre's advice and he circumcised himself. But it was a scary business, that circumcision, at 100 years old, without anesthesia. And this happened on Yom Kippur. Of course, this runs contrary to the famous Medrash Rabbah in Bereshis Rabbah that says that when it says Lushi v'asi ugos, that Avraham Avinu told Sari Menu Lushi v'asi ugos, it was matzah and it was Pesach, right? So it can't be that the third day of the Milah was Pesach and the Milah was on Yom Kippur. Right? So we know that's why the Dazakena Balitaisa says we have three matzahs, Zeicher to the Shloish Se'im Kemach. right? Which is also, again, a sign that it was Pesach. However, there is a argument about this in the Medrash, because there's another Medrash in Bamidbar Rabbah that when it says V'hishanu tachas o eitz, he told them V'hishanu tachas o eitz. Why does it say V'hishanu tachas o eitz? It should say V'hishanu tachas o ilah. So V'hishanu tachas o eitz, it says in the Medrash Malamed she'osel lehem sukkah. He made for them a sukkah, and that it happened on Sukkot, this incident, and the Gemara Rosh Hashanah, according to one opinion, also indicates this, because it says Lamoed, the next season, Ka'is Chaya, your wife will have a child, and the next Moed was Pesach, and we know that Yitzchak was born on Pesach. So therefore we have two different opposing opinions, whether it was around Sukkot time, whether it was around Pesach time. You know, that's this famous, I say it almost every year, the famous Tamim in Hogim, that if Sari Meinu was 90 years old, and she was very accustomed to doing Achnasas Orchim all her life, did Avraham Avinu have to tell her, Lushi Vasiyugos, knead it and make cakes? Well, wouldn't that be an insult to your wife? If you tell her, knead the dough and make us bread, you don't think that Sari Meinu knew Lushi? So the Tamim Menagim brings down a famous answer that he was reminding her that it's Pesach and that you have to work the dough. You can't leave it alone because then it will rise and become chametz. And that's why he reminded her Lushi. I actually saw another answer to this question about the redundant Lushi in a contemporary sefer. The name skips my mind. I apologize to the Mechaber. It's a contemporary sefer, and he gave an interesting answer. He said what Avraham Avinu was telling Sari Imeinu was the guests are in a rush. Right? He had to convince them to stay. Right? Al no savor me'al avdecha. And since they were in a rush, he told her, Lushi, knead it and put it straight into the oven. V'aseh you guys. And make it right away. Normally, you let it rise a little bit, and then you put it into the oven. That's why he told the Lushi, knead it, and put it in right away, because the guests are in a rush. However, I wanted to remark something else about the fact that the Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, the Chidah, says that the Milah of Avraham Avinu is Yom Kippur. Because there's a question, what name should you name a child if a child is born or has a bris milah on Yom Kippur? And I think that people, by and large, if they don't have somebody to name the child after, they almost always give the name Yonah. And it's almost like a no-brainer. I mean, we name after Yonah. That's when we have the story of Yonah. So they give the name Yonah. I would like to suggest that according to this Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, the correct name to give is Avram, because especially if you have a Milah on Yom Kippur, because Avram Avinu was Mal on Yom Kippur, so the correct name would be to give Avram. And I would say that for sure that should go before Yonah, because the story of Yonah was fraught with tzaros. I mean, Yonah was on a boat that was cast around, threatening to be drowned, which was a harrowing experience. Then he was thrown overboard, and then he was swallowed by a whale, and then he had the sadness of the Kikay and the Yonah. So Yonah's life was not what we would call very rosy. On the other hand, Avraham Avinu did the great act of Milah. He was the father of the Jewish people, and if, according to the Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, that was on Yom Kippurim, so then that's the natural name. I would like to suggest further that if you don't give, for whatever reason, Avram, let's say the father of the child is Avram, right? Well, the grandfather is living, his name is Avram, right? So you don't want to give the name Avram, or he has a brother already, Avram. The next name that I would give would still not be Yonah. The next name I would give would be Moshe. Why? Because Moshe Rabbeinu brought down the second Luchas on Yom Kippur. So if I wouldn't give the name Avram, the next name I would give is Moshe. So it's interesting, I have a sefer, those that have listened to my shiurim for decades know that I have an affinity to names. I have a sefer called Ziv HaShemais, who brings down from the Sefer HaBris that the minig was that if a child was born on Yom Kippurim, they gave the name Rachamim, which is very interesting, right? It's Yemei HaRachamim, right? And that's a Sephardi name. Rachamim is a Sephardi name. But Lamaisa is, my choice would be first Abraham. If not Abraham, then it would be Moshe before the name Yonah. It's interesting that at least Rachem is Bigamatria Avraham, right? Because Avraham is 248 and Rachem is 248. So in Rachamim you have a little bit of Avraham also, although it would be Rachem, not Rachamim. I just wanted to point out that in our Haggadah Shel Pesach, we go according to the minig, according to the opinion that it was Pesach time that the angels came, because in the song that we sing, a lot of people's heads are not very clear at that time of the night. But in the Uv'chein v'amartem zevach Pesach, which many people have a minute to do only on the second night. Rav Moshe held that you're supposed to do it on both nights, but many people say the stitch of the V'chein v'amartem zevach Pesach only on the second night. Over there's a stanza, Hisid noitzitzim ugois matzos b'Pesach, which means Hisid noitzitzim, the angels had a meal. Noitzitzin says the Dvar Aaron Hashem Yimkim Daimai is angels of Nitzutzei Eish, angels of sparks of fire. So his Notzitzin, the angels supped Ugois Matzos B'Pesach. So therefore at least we see that in our Haggadah we follow the opinion that it happened on Pesach. I always felt that that's the reason, one of the reasons why we have the whole intro in the Haggadah of Kol Dechvid Yesei V'Yechel, Kol Detzrich Yesei V'Yifsach, because it was the anniversary of the great hospitality of Avraham Avinu, and therefore that's why at the beginning of our Seder we echo this by saying we're like Avraham. Whoever wants to come in, our doors are open. He took butter and milk. The bread became tamei. Sorry, man, it was Persanida. He took the bread and the milk. And he stood beneath the tree. And they ate. Now, malachim don't eat. The malachim are like computers. They can't eat. Right? So, what does it mean by yochelu? Says Rashi from Bava Metzia Pei Vav Amid Beis, Niru Kamoisha Achlu. They gave an illusion like they ate. Malachim are masters of illusion, so they gave an illusion like they ate. And says the Gemara in Bava Metzia Daf Pei Vav Amid Beis, Mikan Shelo Yishana Odom Min Aminik. From here we see that a person shouldn't change from the custom. And since it was the custom for people to eat, guests to eat, so they ate to not change from the custom. Now I have to tell you that here we're learning, as I said, in order to become a Ben Torah, you have to absorb Torah. Here we're learning what it means to be a Ben Torah. You don't act different than other people. In Masechtas Derech Eretz Rabbah, Perek Zayin, it says, Lo yismach Adam bein aboichim. Don't be joyous amongst people that are crying. V'lo oimed bein hayoshvim. Don't stand amongst people that are sitting. V'lo yoshav bein ha'oimdim. Don't sit amongst people that are standing. This is Derech Eretz. Derech Eretz. I'll give you an example. You go into yeshiva and everybody is standing by Chazar Sajatz. Now you don't stand by Chazar Sajatz. Don't sit when everybody's standing. Lo yoshev beinoim. You go to a chasana And everybody stands up for the chassan kala. Now you hold like the sheet of Ramosha, that you don't have to stand up for the chassan and kala because the chassan is not daimel melech until he gets married. And you don't hold for the reason that you're standing up for the yunteferers, for the shishbinim, because the reason why we stood up for the people that brought the bikurim is to make sure they come the next year. But here we don't want there to be another time for these people. We want them to stay married always. But if everybody is standing, don't sit. Everybody's standing, don't sit. You go into a place, they're all standing by Kriyas HaTorah. You sit by Kriyas HaTorah. But everybody's standing, don't sit. Don't be different. This is the rule that we're taught. Al tifroish min hatzivah. Don't be different than everybody else. Now you'll say, Rabbi Weiss, you're making a big deal about this. It's a very big deal. First of all, it's a big deal to merge with the tzibah. You don't want to be outside of the tzibah. In Yiddishkeit, we believe there's protection in numbers. Padoi b'shalom nafshi ki barabim hoyu imadi. Redeem in peace my soul because many people are with me. Hein kel kabir lo yimas. Hashem doesn't detest the many. There's safety in numbers. We want to be with the tzibah. We don't want to be outside of the bubble. That's number one. Rabbeinu Yoina writes at the end of Sefer Hayira, Kloloi shel davar al yeshana odom min aminik. Don't do differently than the custom. This is also, we have a Torah concept, lo yisiskaidu, lo yisasu agudas. That's why Ramesh always held in my shul, on Chol Hamoed, the tefillin wearing people daven separate from the non-tefillin. We don't have a hodgepodge. Lo yisiskaidu, lo yisasu agudas. It shouldn't be helter-skelter. The Chazon Ish writes, so interesting. Now I told you that the Chassam Sofer Zechtzavka Shvachskus Yagan Aleinu says that the first mitzvah to devolve upon a bar mitzvah boy is the mitzvah of simcha, to be besimcha. So the Chazon Ish Zechtzavka Shvachskus Yagan Aleinu, from one great one to another, when you're talking about people like the Chassam Sofer and the Chazon Ish, you're in the upper echelons of Torah greatness, right? So the Chazon Ish says as follows: Mitzvah Rishayna b'Torah he, and he floors you. First mitzvah of the Torah, lo liyos mishuna. Don't be different. Isn't that interesting? Great Chazon Ish. Mitzvah Rishayna b'Torah, lo yiyah mishuna. Don't be different. Don't be different. It's remarkable. Remarkable. And here in the Koivus Igeris of the Chazon Ish, this is how we know about the Chazon Ish. One of the ways we know about the Chazon Ish's Hanhagis. There was a time that the Chazon Ish was the Torah great of the entire world. And we got an insight into the Chazon Ish from his letters. So he writes in one of his letters, I'm going to read it to you verbatim. It's in Chelik Aleph, letter Chaf. Lizar, be careful. Milasois dover mishuna, from doing something different. She'ena chayrin oisim kain, that other people don't do. Ulizar ma'oid bezeh, and be very careful from doing this. Isn't that interesting? Don't be different. There's a Gemara Masechta Shabbos on Daf Kuf Yudalid, famous Gemara Masechta Shabbos Daf Kuf Yudalid. Amalu Reb Yanai lebanav. Reb Yanai instructed his children, Banai, my children, Al tikbareni, don't bury me, Loi bekalim leveinim, not in white garments, V'loi bekalim shchayrim, and not in black garments. Leveinim loi, don't bury me in white garments. Shema lo yeska, maybe I'm going to end up in the wrong place. And then I'll be like a chassan bein avelim. I'll be like a chassan amongst the mourners. Don't bury me in black garments. Shema Eska, maybe I'll go to Gan Eden. I don't want to be different. Wherever I go, I don't want to be different. See that instruction? So much so that the Likutei Amorim says, famous, when was Yitzchak Mesakin Tfilas Mincha? It says, Vayetze Yitzchak Lasuach Basada. So Rashi says, Ain't Sicha Ela Tfilah. But why does it say Vayetze Yitzchak Lasuach Basada? Why doesn't it say Vayetze Yitzchak Lispal Basada or Lavoy Basada? Why does it say Lasuach Basada? So I always thought the answer is that Yitzchak, the Amud HaAvodah, the pillar of Tefillah, the pillar of service, his davening was like a sicha. He was mamish conversing with the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's the biggest praise of Yitzchak's davening. That Yitzchak's davening was lasucha, was conversational. They say you hear certain gedalim, it's mamish, you hear them conversing with Hashem. It's like a conversation. But that's not what the Likutei Amorim says. The Likutei Amorim says that it says Ayetze Yitzchak Lasuach Basada, he davened, but he did it unobtrusively, so that people shouldn't think he's strange. He didn't want to look strange. He didn't want to be Meshunah. Oh, so now the question is, why? Why should a person be careful not to stand out? I gave you one reason. Because there's a protection to be part of the tzibur. But there are other reasons. The first reason is a lot of times people act differently because they're screaming for attention. That's why people act differently. Why do you think people have tattoos and body piercings? Do you really think that people think it's nice to have big things coming out of their tongues? Hooks in their mouth? You think they think that's pretty? It's attractive? No, but it sure draws attention. And there are people that are screaming for attention. That's guy. We don't want to scream for attention. A Jew always wants to live below the radar. You live below the radar, you're safe. You scream for attention, a lot of people notice you and give you an ayin hara. Well, we don't want to be. We want to be below the radar. Unless we're doing a mitzvah Hashem bara, miras einayim, but otherwise, don't do things different to take attention. I'll give you an example. Here's a person. He decides he's going to stand the whole Yom Kippur by that. Now, why is he doing it? Is he doing it because he's so pious? Or is he doing it because the whole day everybody's going to go, wow, you see, he's still standing. That's amazing. That's to draw attention. To do things to draw attention, that's not safe. We don't want to draw attention. Attention is no good. Rav said so many people die from ayin hara. We don't want it. That's one reason not to be Meshunah. Also, another reason, and this is so important, I can't emphasize this enough. The Gemara in Ksubas on the Shas Cotton, in Ksubas Daf Yud Zayin, the Gemara says, L'oilam tehei daitoi shel adam mu'ureves im abris. You should always be mu'urev im abris. You should mingle with people. You should get along with people. Those are the people that we ask to be our ambassadors to daven for us on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. One of the chief things is that the chazan is supposed to be mu'urev im abris, supposed to get along with everybody. But I want to add one more reason why you shouldn't be different. Think about this carefully, Rabbis. Don't be different than the tzibur, because the tzibur mostly gets it right. How do we know the tzibur mostly gets it right? Because the Gemara shares with us this language. Poik chazi my amadva. Go and see. If you don't know what the law is, go and see what people are doing. You know, there's this expression, the oilam is a goyim, but that's not true. The Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara says, go and see. When the Gemara wasn't sure what to do, go and see what people are doing. And therefore, don't be different in the community. Don't be smarter than the community. This is a very good rule of thumb. You're doing things differently. Well, what's the matter? Why can't I come into shul with pink pants and a green bow tie? Don't be different than the community. Don't stick out. Don't draw attention. It's not good. Now we come to a great Torah theme. Hashem says why He loves Avraham Avinu. Now, there were great men before Avraham Avinu. It was Sushelach, Noach, Sheis, Chanoich, Eber, Shem. Very great men. Great men. But Hashem says Avram's the one. Ki yadativ. I loved him. Rashi says Yadativ means Ava, Chiba. Chiba Yisera. Like it says, Adam Yoda Eschava Ishtay. It refers to the highest level of intimacy. So Hashem says, Ki Yadativ. I loved him. Why? Laman Asher Yitzave Esbonav Esbnei Beisai Acharav. Shamru Derech Hashem Lasli Tzedakah Mishpat. I loved him because I know he's going to teach his children and his family after him to keep the way of Hashem, to do righteousness and justice. Says the Chofetz Chaim in a fascinating Chofetz Chaim. Chofetz Chaim says, if you want to know, let's say you work for a company like B&H. B&H has 1,700 employees. So you work in their hiring department. And you want to know if somebody likes what he's doing. Okay? So the Chofetz Chaim says, let's say you see a person as a carpenter, and you want to know if he really enjoys carpentry. So he says the way to determine is to see if he teaches his child to be a carpenter. If he tells his child, I want you to be a toll collector, that means he doesn't enjoy carpentry that much. Because if he enjoyed carpentry, he would want his child to be a carpenter. Nowadays, a lot of doctors don't want their children to be doctors. Doctors can't make money anymore. They don't want their children. They have to work so hard to be a doctor. They don't want their children to be doctors. I've heard this from many doctors. No, I don't want my child to be a doctor. I want him to have a life. Says the Chofetz Chaim, it's the same way if you want to see if a person is a Yoreh Shemayim, if a person is a Talmid Chacham. If that person teaches his child to do the mitzvahs, and he teaches the child Torah, and to respect Talmidei Chacham, then you know that the father loves Torah. He says, Hashem said, Ki yadativ, I love Hashem because I see that that's what He's teaching His children. I love Avram because I see that that's what He's teaching His children. It's not a coincidence that right after we say Baruch Atah Hashem, Haboicher ba'amo Yisrael be'ava, we say the mitzvah v'shinantom levanecha. That's this thing. Because you could tell what a person likes by what he teaches his children. Actually, this is in Kriya Shema itself. These words that I command you upon your heart, vishinantam levanecha. Because if they're beloved by you and they're in your heart, then you'll teach them to your children. Now, it's also true the other way. The only way to succeed in teaching your children is if you're heartsick about it. I've pointed that out many times in this shir, that many parents make their children great baseball fans because they love baseball, so they teach it to their children. And women teach their daughters a love for shopping because they love to shop. If it's on your heart, then you'll succeed in teaching it to your children. But I want to be machadish to you tonight that that's in the word chinuch. I never realized this, even though I always study words. But if you take the word chinuch, it's really fascinating. If you take the word chinuch and you look at it carefully, you'll see the chinuch is the same letters as Kain Chayav. Kain Chayav. Chaf Nun Ches Yud Vav. Or V'chein Chay. That's the way you live. Because the way you live, that's what's going to be the chinuch to your children. That's why chinuch is V'chein Chay. Or Kain Chayav. Now, as we're on the subject of Lasais Tzedakah Mishpat, I have to tell you a story that knocked my socks off. This story, Rabbi say, please, if you're not sitting well on your chairs, I want you to straighten out. I don't want you to hurt yourselves. This story, you know, like they say, if it wouldn't have happened, you wouldn't believe it. We know that it says lastly tzedakah mishpat. What's the fusion of tzedakah and mishpat? It says b'tzedek tishpait amisech. We're instructed to judge people favorably, which, by the way, for b'nei aliyah, for people like us that go to shiurim and try to better themselves, it's not an easy thing to do. Because since we're instructed to be critical-minded, our Yetzer Haras get us to train that critical mind onto others. Now, we're taught by the Medrash that that's why we have two eyes, to judge ourselves critically and to judge others favorably. People mixed up the two eyes, and they judge themselves favorably and other people critically. So listen to this story. It's a true story. It's quoted in Piryei Masak. What happened is as follows. There was a Rosh Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael who, as we know, in the time of declining economy, he was absolutely not able to put food on the yeshiva's table. He couldn't feed the bacher. He was defaulting on the loan in the bank, and his whole yeshiva, he has a very successful yeshiva, his whole yeshiva was threatening with extinction. So there were some people, Malabatim, that wanted to help out the Rosh Yeshiva. And they told him that there's a certain Gevir in England who will be very sympathetic to the niche that this Rosh Yeshiva carved out in Eretz Yisrael, and that they would set up a meeting with him for this wealthy man, and that they thought it was worthwhile, he could save the yeshiva. So he flew out to England, and he met the wealthy man, and the wealthy man had an album where he had pictures of the yeshiva. He had a little video made of the actual shiurim, and this wealthy man was extremely impressed. And he said, "Excuse me, I have a special checkbook. I want to give you a very big donation to make your trip worthwhile, to help you out in your time of need. I'll be right back." And it was a svarim room where the Gevir, you could imagine a beautiful svarim room. So the Rosh Yeshiva said, "Would you mind? I just came off the plane. I didn't get a chance to learn yet. Would you mind while I wait if I take a sefer?" He said, "No, kol hakavod." So the Rosh Yeshiva goes, pulls out a Gemara, and sits down to learn. After about 7 minutes, the Yid comes in with his checkbook. He takes a look at the Rosh Yeshiva, and he turns angry. And he says, "I'm sorry, I changed my mind. I'm not giving the yeshiva anything." So the Rosh Yeshiva was like stunned. He said, "What happened? I'm just sitting here and learning." What did I do to change your mind so drastically? He said, I'd rather not talk about it, but I can't help you. So the Rosh Yeshiva got up. The Rosh Yeshiva was a real Eidela. Rosh Yeshiva got up and he said, look, you don't owe me anything. But one thing I hope is that my mission to England shouldn't turn out to be some kind of a Chil Hashem. Obviously, I did something to turn you off, and I suspect it's a tuz on your part. At least you owe me, I traveled so many miles, an explanation. So the Gvir said, look, I was being nice, but if you really want me to tell you, I'll tell you the truth. I came in, and I see you learning in the Gemara, and the Gemara is upside down. So it's clear to me that you're a faker, and you don't even know how to read. So Rosh Yeshiva starts laughing. And the Gevir says, I don't understand what you're laughing about. This is a very serious man. So he said, let me tell you. When I was a little boy, I grew up in Taiman. And in Taiman, the poverty was so terrible that when we learned by the Rebbe, we only had one Gemara. And 8 people sat around one Gemara. I was one of the big Talmidim, so I sat opposite the Rebbe, and all my youth I learned from a Gemara upside down. To the point that nowadays it's easier for me to learn from the Gemara upside down. But if you don't believe me, test me. And the Rosh Yeshiva went ahead and read all the Gemara, Rashi and Tosfos from the Gemara upside down. So the Gvir started crying. And he said, you know, it says, I came to such a decision because of what I saw. I see how dangerous it is not to judge a person favorably. And Rabbi said, this is such an incredible lesson. You can't always believe what you see. Now, the first place to practice Danas Chaveru L'Kavsvos is with your spouse. Because since we live with a person all the time, we assume right away, we know for sure the reason. And many times people are wrong. And you know, when you're not on a person L'Kavsvos, it says, like in Megufay, a person comes to bodily harm. So it's very important to give people at least a chance to explain. Vayigash Avram hears about the terrible fate of Stein Vayeira. Vayigash Avram Vayomer, and Avram says, "Ha'af tispet tzadikim Russia? Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" And here Avram Avinu exercises something. Again, remember, we're all Talmidov Shel Avram Avinu. We're all disciples of Avram Avinu. We have to learn how to behave like Avram. Here Avram teaches us a very important part of being a Jew. It's a Gemara in Brachas Daf Yud Beis Amar. Kol she'ef sheloi levakesh rachamim al chaveiroi ve'einoi mevakesh nikra chaytei. If you could pray for someone and you don't pray, you're a sinner. It's not righteous. It's a sin if you don't pray for a person. It has to be efshir. You have to know about it. But if you know about it, let me example. Your wife is having headaches. It's a sin not to be mispal. Your husband is having heartburn. It's a sin not to be mispal. Your child has psoriasis. It's a sin not to be mispal. Now that's ABC. That's elementary. That's beginner's course. Listen to what Rabbeinu Yoina writes in Sefer Hayira. Rabbeinu Yoina writes in Sefer Hayira, "V'yispalo b'chol yom lefi tzchos l'shaynai." A person should daven every day according to how articulate he is. Al kol chaylei b'nei adam sheyisrapu. It's interesting. He doesn't even say Chayle B'nai Yisrael. The Lashon Rabbeinu Yoin is Al Kol Chayle B'nai Adam She Yisrael. And then he goes on. V'al Abriyam Shelo Yechelu. And on those that are healthy, they shouldn't become sick. Now, Rabbi said there is a place already in print where we can do this with ease once a week at least. After Shalom Aleichem, before Eishes Chayim, there's a tefillah, there's a zmira, Ribono Kol Olamim. Starts Kim Alachim Yitzav. Ribono Kol Olamim. In Ribono Kol Olamim, we say as follows. It's so kedai to say this. V'haser mimeni u'mikol b'nei beisi, remove from me and all of my household, u'mikol amcha Yisrael, Beis Yisrael, and from all of Kal Yisrael, kol minei chayla, all types of sickness, v'chol minei madve, and all types of worry, v'chol minei dalis v'aniyos v'avyonis. It's such a gewaltige tefillah. And that's the fulfillment of this, because otherwise a person is a sinner. You know where we learn it out? We learn it out from that great man Shmuel. Shmuel says, Gam anochi chalila li mechatoy laHashem. For far be it from me to sin to Hashem, mechadol ispalo b'atchem, to refrain from praying for you. Far be it from me. Now, in this week's parasha, we're taught the bonus one gets when he prays for other people. Right? You know it's in this week's parasha. We know because it says Hashem Kasher Amar, which we learn it's because of the fact that Avraham Avinu was mispal for Abimelech. It's interesting that in the parasha Makima, he brings down that the source of Kol Mispal Ba'ad Chaver V'Utzach Lo Yisadav Unen Etchila, the source is the Gemara Bava Kama Daf Tzadik Gimel, and the Gemara Bava Kama Tzadik Beis Amud Aleph. The Gemara Bava Kama brings another raya because it says by Eiv, V'Hashem Shaveh Shvus Eiv B'Spal Loi Ba'ad Reyehu. So everybody asks, why does the Gemara have to bring a raya from Eiv if it already brought a raya from Abraham? So they give such a clever answer, such a clever answer. They said, I might think that the only time if you pray for somebody else, you're answered first. It's only if you don't know that skula. Avraham Avinu didn't know the skula. But once you know the skula, so it's already selfish. But even though Eiv already knew it, because Eiv was after Abraham, according to all opinions, Eiv was after Abraham, and yet he was answered even though he knew the skula. So it's okay to know the skula. That's why the Gemara brings the second raya. The Rani Akara brings down that women that are barren should take names of couples that are also barren and pray for them. He brings us an eitzah. And this eitzah, by the way, works for shalom bayis. People that have hard shalom bayis should pray for other people that have hard shalom bayis. For people that are out of parnasa. For people that are single. It works in all areas. Listen what this Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, 14th century Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, writes in the Sefer Hasidim. Writes something very interesting in the Sefer Hasidim. Shem ispalo al chaveiroi. If you pray for someone, afal pi shelo yo'ilu lechaveiroi, it didn't help your friend, and you don't need this now. Mikol makam kishiyavai huay zarai la'isay tzar. If he or his descendants come to that need, zoicher es tfilasai al chaveiroi u'moshiach. That amazing thing. Here's a person. He knows somebody that's having trouble in Parnasa. He prays for him. He's not having trouble in Parnasa. But one day, his child will be in trouble. He'll be in trouble with Parnasa. Hashem will remember how the Tata prayed for this other person who needed Parnasa. So the Sefer Hasidim says, here's a person, his heart is bleeding. There's a family with a bunch of daughters. They're not getting shidduchim. He prays for them. His whole family is married. But he'll have a granddaughter. They'll have a hard time getting married. And Hashem will remember how the Zayda prayed. It's so important to pray for other people. It's so the way of Hashem. Hashem wants us to daven for others. Today, with what's going on with shidduchim, today what's going on with parnasa, today what's going on with the economy, today what's going on in Sloan Kettering, so much to daven for. We daven anyway, Rabbi say. Our tefillah should be full of for other people. Now we come to another very popular issue. Vayashkem Avram b'boker el hamokom asher amad sham es pnei Hashem. Avram got up in the morning to the place where he stood before Hashem. So we know that this is the source to have a mokum kavua by davening. Amar brachas tabav amid beis, Amar Rebbe Chelbei, Amar Rav Huna, kol hakevei hamokum l'tfilasai. Whoever fixes a place for his tefillah, Elokei Avram be'ezrai, the God of Avram is in his stead. Ukeshemeis, and when this person davens, Oimrim Lai, they say about him, Ei Anav, where is the humble person? Ei Chassid mitalmidav shel Avram Avinu, because it says Vayashkem Avram b'boker el hamokom asher omad sham. It says in Shulchan Aruch this Yikva Mokom l'tfilasai shelo yishana sham loy l'tzay. So I want to preface all of the reasons why this is important to Psak of Reb Chaim Kanievsky and Rav Zilberstein, that this is not a reason to kick a guest out of a seat. There's a bar mitzvah in Shul and Ofruf, and you come late, and somebody is sitting in your seat, and you say, "Excuse me, well, you're stealing my seat." It's not a reason to push a guest out of the seat. First of all, within Daled Amos is good. But even if there's no room within Daled Amos, Reb Chaim Kanievsky Paskins, it's not a reason to kick an Oireach out of the seat. It's more important to be kind and hospitable to the Oireach. I wanted to learn that's why we learn out the din of Mokum Kavua from Vayashkem Avram b'boker. You want your Mokum Kavua, get up early if you know there's a bar mitzvah, and be in your seat 15 minutes before that. That's a way to have your Mokum Kavua. That's probably why we learn it out from Vayashkem Avram b'boker. It's interesting that I think it's the Sivsei Chachamim and Masechtas Brachas that says, why a Anav? Why is he called an Anav? So because if you want to have a Mokum Kavua, you take a humble seat. Because if it's a Chashiv seat, other people will sit in it. But if you take a humble seat, nobody's going to sit in it. That way you'll have a Mokum Kavua. Why is it important to have a Mokum Kavua? So the two popular reasons are, number one, since Tfilas Keneged Karbonas Tiknam, so just like the Karbonas were brought on a Mokum Kavua and the Mizbeach Hashem, which was in a fixed place, so also your Tfilah should be in a fixed place. The second reason, Rashba and others, is that if you daven in the same place all the time, you're less likely to be distracted. If you daven in a different place, you're not used to the surroundings, so that the surroundings will distract you. But if you daven always in the same place, you're less likely to be distracted. Those are the two popular reasons for Mokum Kavua. But they're not the only reasons. In the Kisvei Arizal, he gives a very fascinating reason. He says that if a king is setting siege to a city and he wants to get through the wall, so if he's a smart king, he uses the what's that machine called? What is it called? Battering ram. I was thinking about a batting cage, but okay. A battering ram. Right? He uses a battering ram, and he goes all the time in the same spot. If the king is not smart, he says, not working over here, he goes to another place, a fourth place, a fifth place. He doesn't, but he always goes in the same spot, finally he'll get through. That's the example that the Arizal uses. This is the same thing. Since the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, there's a Mesach HaMavdil, there's an iron curtain, and we got to pierce a hole between the iron curtain, in the iron curtain. If we daven always in the same place, it's like having that battering ram, and finally we'll pierce through. If we daven in different places, it's not going to happen. That's what the Arizal writes. It's interesting that the Mabit, who wrote this special Sefer on Tefillah called the Beis Elokim, the Mabit writes that davening in the same place is like what it says by the Erev Tavshilin. Erev Tavshilin is an Indian to take the Erev Tavshilin and eat it by Shalosh Shudas. Because Ken She'avid Ba Mitzvah Chada Yavid Ba Mitzvah Achrit. Since a mitzvah was done, do it in another mitzvah. That's why we take the hadassim from the lulav and we use it for beer chametz. Because since we did one mitzvah, we do another mitzvah. So when you daven in the same place, that place already has gathered holiness. Because you daven there again, you daven there again. So by the way, this is true even if somebody has to daven sometimes at home. At home also you should have a makom kavod. You should always daven in the same place for all of these reasons. The Mabit yet says another reason. He says that when a person davens in the same place all the time, Hashem remembers, of course, but Hashem brings to his mind your former requests easier, because you're davening in the same place that you made those requests. So it's maskir the tefillas from before. Now I'd like to add something over here. Over here we find that the Mefarshim say, so it's good not to shtibel hop, but to daven always in the same place. But I want to add that shtibel hopping is a very bad thing. There are people that daven where the kugel is best. They don't even shtibel hop, they kugel hop. Oh, I hear there's a kiddush here. I hear there's single malt scotch here. I'm in the mood over here. I hear there's a chazan there. It's very important that we grow attached to a rabbi. Very important. Things happen in life. If a person has a rabbi, it's a big hatzalah. It's a big hatzalah for children. People don't realize they go and they daven in shuls that don't have a rabbi. They're very smart. They say, if I daven in a shul that doesn't have a rabbi, I get out at 10:30. There's no drasha. It's a quick davening. Nobody there to tell me what to do. No rules. It's gewaldig. First of all, when they do that, they're cheating their children of hearing a drasha every Shabbos. I have no idea what they're cheating their children for. They're also in a shul that, by the way, a lot of times does many things wrong. Because there's no Talmud Chacham at the helm that learned from Dairis Kadmainim what to do. See, in my shul, even though I'm not a big cheese, but I learned from Ramosha. I davened with Ramosha for 10 years. So at least I'm giving my oilam a Messiah. Davening in a shul that doesn't have anybody at the helm, it's robbing the children. But more than that, if there's a problem, who's gonna, somebody has a siksuk with you, they say, who's his Rav? He doesn't have a Rav. What are we going to do now? It's a big problem. He has a Rebbe. Yeah. Rebbe's in the cemetery in Yerushalayim. Big problem. Now I'm going to tell you now a chidah who quotes from the Rekanti. Maram Rekanti. Now, I don't know what this chidah means at all. I don't understand it, and it's not for contemporary use at all. But it sheds a lot of light on a lot of things. You know, sometimes when you learn Torah, you find some missing links that explains a lot of things. It says, Hashem pakad es Sarah. Hashem remembered Sarah and gave her a child. So the Chidah in Ois Ayin Vav says from the Maran Rekanti that Avram Avinu knew that Sarah Imenu was an Akara, and therefore he wasn't intimate with her until Hashem told him that he would have Zerah from her. And when Hashem told him that, she was Nisabra Mebir Rishon. That's what the Rekanti writes. Now what that means, I have no idea. And what does that mean? I mean, still had a mitzvah of Oina with his wife. What does it mean? But the Sarah was Meichel. I have no idea what it means. But that's what the Rekanti says, that Avraham Avinu was not intimate with Sarah until Hashem told him that they would have children. And then she was Nisabra Mebir Rishon. With this information, you understand tremendously why when Hagar was Vatekel Gevirta Beinah, because she said, look, Sarah Imenu is married to him all these years, and I was Nisabra Mebir Rishon, we could understand why Sarah Imenu said, Chamosi Alecha, my anger is on you. You should have told her that you were never with me. And all of a sudden, it sheds a whole different light. It also explains why it says, Ata Yadati, now I know, Ki Isha Yafas Marat, right? When he came to the Nile, and he saw a reflection in the Nile, now I know. What, he never looked at his wife? Husband's allowed to look at his wife. He'd be the only person that didn't look at her. It says, Yiska, Shakol Seichin Miyafya. Now I know. I mean, he's the only person that's supposed to look at her. He never looked at her. What's that all about? According to the Rekanti, he was never with her. That's what we can understand. He never looked at her. And as I said, I don't understand what it means, but at least it fills in some of the blanks. Vatelech vateshiv la minegev harke kimitachave keshes. When Yishmael was dying from the fever, so Hagar went far away, like 2 lengths of the bow. Ki Omra, she said, Al era b'mois hayeled. I don't want to see the death of the child. I can't bear it. Reb Shamshon Rafal Hirsch, Zechet Tzadik Levrach, Schus Yogan Aleinu, writes that this is not the Jewish way. A Jew would not act this way. A mama would never leave her dying child. I can't bear the look. That's the way of a guy. Because a guy is thinking about themselves. The way of a Yid would never abandon a dying relative. First of all, we never give up. Second of all, we're there for the tamicha of the chayla. That's why we always want to be there b'shas hamisa. So Reb Shamshon Rafal Hirsch makes a point to say that this, what the Torah tells us about Hagar, was critical, and that this is not the way a Jew would behave. But it's interesting. There's a sefer called, I don't know how to pronounce it, so I won't pronounce it. It's a sefer written by the nephew of the Rav Mebar Tanura. He's also a Bar Tanura, also a great gadol. And he wrote, I think it's Emor Nikei, but I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. He wrote a sefer, and in the sefer he cites that Hagar, knowing that Yishmael was a Roiva Keshes, he was a great shooter of arrows, and knowing that Yishmael was delirious from his fever, she was afraid that he would shoot her with the bow. And that's why she went And this pshat is brought down by Rav Steinman in his Ayala Sashach. Very, very interesting. It's different than what the Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch writes. I was sitting and preparing today. My wife knows that Tuesday is a day where she can. My wife doesn't drive, so usually I drive her wherever she goes, wherever she wants to go. I have Sfarim in the car, but on Tuesday she knows that I'm usually not even taking phone calls. She always says, if I'm on the phone with somebody, she tells the person, you should know you rank very high, that my husband is even taking your phone call on a Tuesday, You should know. She says that about our grandchildren, that they're able to pierce me on a Tuesday. But anyway, she was sitting by the table today. We were eating a quick lunch together, and I told her, there's a Tzror Hamor. The Tzror Hamor is from the great Pirushim on Chumash. The Tzror Hamor, it says, "Vayeira Gems ben Hagar mitzvahs asher yodel Avram mitzachik." Now, I told you many times that Rav Moshe Scherer once said by a keynote session on Motzei Shabbos, "What's the ugliest word in the Torah?" He said it in a refined way. What's the word that has the worst connotation in the Torah? So after everybody thought for a minute, he says it's definitely mitzachik. Rashi says mitzachik is avodah zarah gilai roya shrichas damim. It's the worst word in the Torah. And so he made a point of saying that after 100 years and 90 years of Sarah and Avram thinking about a name, they couldn't come up with a better name than Yitzchak. So his point was that it's a difference in the tenses. A Mitzachik is an Arab. He lives to laugh now. A Yitzchak is a Yid because he lives to laugh in the future. That was the point that he made. So Rashi says Mitzachik is a cholent, a grouping of the worst things in the world. But the Tzror Hamor says something else. He says Mitzachik means laughing. And Zekanim, old people, don't like when people laugh around them because they think that they're laughing at them. I mentioned this to my wife. My wife, for the last over a decade, goes to a nursing home. This is a volunteerism. This is our own thing. She goes to a nursing home on Fanning Street in Staten Island, Clove Lake Nursing Home. And for an hour, she takes down all the Jewish patients. And she entertains them for an hour. That's one of her mitzvahs. She does it, and she collects people to help her. She brings other people in the mitzvah. She's doing this every Tuesday morning for more than a decade. So my wife said this to me. When I told her this, she says, it's true. I see it all the time. I'm laughing, and people say, why are you laughing at me? She said she sees this. Oh, you have to... Torah! You have to know, be careful when you're laughing amongst old people, because they might think that you're laughing at them. Something to remember. Vayemer kach noas pinchas yichidcha asher ahavta es Yitzchak va'alehu sham la'ila. By the way, we're pretty situated, unless I get carried away. That could happen. But we're pretty situated now to daven at 11:15. So if you want to have a minyan at 11:15, start your engines, decide who wants to daven for the Yamid, because otherwise they're going to want to make us wait till 11:30. So if I cooperate, I'm not sure yet, but I might cooperate, it's going to be close. Even at 11:17, we could still daven. So start your engines, Rabbi said. And I'll mention now that hopefully we'll have a CD. We won't have a tape, but we'll have a CD after the share of tonight's share, and also power benching. in pocket size is available. It's a steal at $10. The full Sefer at $10. It's available. Of course, I have the big one. If you want to really learn from it, $25. And if you want to, as we've had Reb Ruskin do, he supported a whole seminary. If you want to buy multiple copies, we can make it very reasonable if you want to dedicate it to your child's class or school. And that can be done right away. Okay. Rashi says, why doesn't he just say Kachas Yitzchak? So Rashi says, he didn't reveal it to him right away, lest he get a shock and he could have a heart attack. From here we learn a big lesson. You give people sudden news, you gotta break it to them slowly. Gotta break it to them slowly. Somebody died, you don't call up with your wife and say, sorry, your mother died. Boom! Don't do that. Oh, you know that they just took your mother to the hospital. Well, yeah, I think it's pretty serious. Slowly. Slowly. We learn this also with good news. It says by Yaakov, when Osnas told Yaakov, it was Osnas that told, Sarah Pasasha, when she told Yaakov, it says over there, Vayagidu loy leimar oid Yosef Chai. The word leimar is extra. Chaim HaKadosh says, should say Vayagidu loy oid Yosef Chai. What do you mean Vayagidu loy leimar? They told him say. Says Chaim HaKadosh, Vayagidu loy leimar. They told him saying, we have some good news. First they said we had some good news. You got to get the person ready. You give the sudden news, whether bad or good, look at it. Somebody, sorry, man. Lama nismacha misa sar lakeda. So either according to the version that they told her he died, or according to the version the son said he's okay. Sudden news causes a person, Rahman al-San, to die. After we learn from this, Torah, say news slowly. Vayakoi des Yitzchak B'nai. It's a very interesting Hadar Zakanim, written by the Bali Tosfos, that Avram Avinu put Yitzchak in a box because he was afraid the son would try to throw something at him and make him a mum. Now, both the El Yerabah and the Mat Ephraim say that the Baal Tekeya hides the shofar. We put a cover over the shofar until the Baal Tekeya blows it. So the Redal says the reason is because to remember the fact that Avram put Yitzchak in a box to protect them from the sun. A fascinating thing. I just want to end off. Zaka Sedaim va'amoira ki rabba. The cries in Sedaim and Amoira was great. Says Rabbeinu Ephraim, ki rabba is the word keriva. Same letter. Ki rabba is keriva. It's that girl that they coated with honey and they had the bee sting her. That the Rabbeinu Shalom said, I want to see Haketzakosa. So that's there in the pasuk. Ki Rabba is Keriva. If you remember, I told you that if you add up the whole family by light, it was 8. If it would have been for this girl, it would have been 9. The Shekhinah would have been Mitzurif. It would have saved the city. Millions of people. It was what they did to Keriva, to that child, that brought the doom to the whole country. Lo Yaleinu. Rabbi, say thank you very much for joining us. Please bring a friend next week.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.